Okay. Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for joining. And, this is our second day celebrating our 20-year anniversary. Today's more of an education day today, where we're going to go over and educate everybody on the nonprofit Feeding America and how they operate, how they work, and get a lot of questions answered. We want you to feel very comfortable about the money that you're contributing and where that money's going. So right off the bat, we have hit the ground running, have already had great success. And this is it's been less than, no, it's exactly 24 hours from the time that we announced the initiative yesterday. And just in that short period of time, we'll give some totals. Yeah, let's give some totals.
Yeah, here's the reveal.
So as far as the contribution from our employees right now, it was $148,743. And then if you look at the company match, is $297,000. And then the total of that already in 24 hours is $446,229. So, woohoo!
Out of the gate strong, right?
So yeah.
My
great
goodness.
stuff.
Wow.
So thanks so much for everybody. We have such a generous group. We have talked to everybody as far as, and we want to just reinforce this again today. If you're an employee, where to go? And then if you are outside of the company, you're not an employee, where to go? So if you're an employee, you go to
rate.com/food drive.
Okay. And it will be in your payroll deduction, right?
Yep.
So it'll be a payroll deduction. Again, it's rate.com/food drive. And then if you're outside of guaranteed rate, it's rate.com/donate. Right?
Yep.
So again, rate.com/donate. So anybody from outside of the organization, you could do that. And you could tell anybody, there's people out there that might know about Feeding America, or even just generally know about the need right now nationally for people who the need for these food banks to provide them food right now. I mean, if you think about it, the demand is higher right now than it ever has been, and there's less people. There's 40 million people unemployed, and there's less people out there that have the ability to give, right? So the fact that we're in a business that's doing as well as it is at a time of this pandemic, and obviously everything that else is happening in the world, we're blessed, right? So this is a time for us to be able to give back, step up, and really do what we can to help out those that are less fortunate. We are happy now to have the director of partnerships here from Feeding America, and it's Elizabeth. And I'm gonna have you pronounce the last name, because I heard I will probably not pronounce it correctly, and I don't want to do that.
Elizabeth Markart, who we've gotten to know over the last.
Very well done, Steve Moffitt. Thank you so much.
So who we've gotten to know.
And Mr. Ciardelli, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Very well over the last few weeks, and she and her organization are doing great work, around the country, and have been for quite some time, but even more so in times like these. So, Elizabeth, we have a ton of folks on the line, and are very eager to hear a bit more about Feeding America. So, I want to kind of turn it over to you and have you walk us through your organization's value proposition and mission, and kind of some of those details.
I'd love to. Thank you so much. And if there's any audio problem at any point, just let me know. But first, just let me say many, many congratulations on 20 years of a very, very successful business. Really a pleasure to be with you today as you celebrate a long and wonderful ride and many wonderful years to come. So, and kudos to you for all that you've accomplished, and not just in creating a great product that so many want, but in creating so many wonderful jobs and really building a community like you've built. It's clear that you have a sense of community at your company, and that comes through in the way that you're giving back. And just want to thank you so much for choosing this moment of your 20 years celebration to choose Feeding America as your partner. Feeding America has been in existence about twice as long as Guaranteed Rate. We're the largest and oldest charitable food network in the country. We bring together 200 member food banks all around the country who work with 60,000 agencies to get food out to people in need. So food banks are these big warehouse operations that are expert at sourcing, logistics, and storing and transporting food. And then the agencies we partner with are food pantries, meal programs, boys and girls clubs, after-school programs, all those places where people come together. So the value proposition for Feeding America is really that we enable incredible national companies like you to form a national partnership with a national nonprofit. We're the second largest nonprofit in the U.S., then the largest charitable food assistance program, to be able to form a national partnership and activate locally in communities across the country. So Feeding America Network food banks serve every county in the U.S. Every person in the country lives in the service area of a Feeding America Network food bank, which means not only that you're supporting local needs when you support our partnership, but also as your employees, some of you may already volunteer as part of our network, and certainly over time, if you'd like to, there are opportunities no matter where you may live and work for Guaranteed Rate. There are opportunities to give back of your time and talent in your backyard, because most people want to help first and foremost hunger in their own communities. So we're really happy to partner with you to do that. If you want to show the slides, feel free. Otherwise, I'm happy to speak without them, and I don't want to be overly...
We're going to pull them up right now, Elizabeth. Yeah, thank you.
Sure. Yeah. So we have a few slides here. Just wanted to share a little bit about Feeding America and how we're responding to COVID-19 with partners like you. If you want to advance. In ordinary times, Feeding America, we feed more than 40 million Americans across the country, including 12 million children and 7 million seniors. In ordinary times, distributing more than 4 billion meals a year. Much of that is produce, fresh fruits and vegetables. Also, increasingly, we're able to source and distribute dairy. That's what families want when they come in. They say, do you have milk for my kids? And we're working on getting more animal protein out to the network as well. So it's not just shelf-stable foods, but also fresh perishables, which we know are often more nutritious for you. Sustainability is at the core of our mission. We rescue more than 3 billion pounds of food that would otherwise go to waste. Perfectly good, wholesome food that might be manufacturing overruns or retail rejected at port for some reason. Perfectly good food that just because of paperwork or distress packaging or something, a retailer doesn't want to sell it, they can donate it instead. And we turn around and distribute it to people in need. So because of efficiencies like that and the way we're able to source food and some of the government commodities that we can source as well, we're able to source and distribute 10 meals for each $1 donated. So that's a strong part of our value proposition as well. And in ordinary times, more than 2 million volunteers a month help us do our work. Ordinarily, we cannot do this work without our volunteers, but that story and a lot of this story has changed in this crisis. And that's a little bit about what I want to update you on the next slide. So most of you probably remember mid-March. I know I do really well. I live in the Chicago area. I know your headquarters is there, but you're located all around the country. When suddenly, in the space of a week, we went from, wait, should we maybe use more hand sanitizer to everybody working remote, and suddenly businesses closing. A lot happened for the people we serve and the people we're now serving in that week. A couple things created really a perfect storm of crisis. For one thing, we saw a dramatically increased need that has only continued to increase. So many schools going out of session, and so many children depend on those school meals to get the main meals of their day, often their breakfast and lunch. Suddenly they didn't have school to go to. And then jobs started to disappear, either entirely or furloughs and temporary layoffs. As Mr. Ciardelli said, now 40 million Americans have filed for unemployment, just unfathomable. And so when families face tough times, one of the first places they tend to cut is the food budget. It's a little more elastic than the mortgage, for example, which is a little harder to say, hey, can I pay less on the mortgage this month? The food budget, they tend to start making cuts. They buy less food. They buy less nutritious food. Obviously, that's not good for kids. It's not good for people in the family who have health issues. And that's where we step in. Another few things that happened, you are very familiar with this, both as consumers and as business leaders. The supply chain, we had enormous supply chain disruptions start in March that are in some ways we're only still catching up with. Overnight, we had food service and restaurant and hospitality businesses have to close. And so the farmers and growers who produce for those businesses had surplus inventory of fresh food with no customers. And so we had these tragic images, split screen of dumped produce and dairy on one side of the screen with long lines of cars needing food from a food bank on the other side of the screen. So it took time for the supply chain to catch up. In addition, we saw a dramatic decrease in the donations of food at scale to our network. Ordinarily, manufacturers and retailers, Walmart, Target, Costco, all the big ones, donate large-scale amounts of food that for whatever reason they can't sell to us, but they didn't have food to donate. If they, I mean, you saw those shelves cleared out. If they got anything on their shelves, they were able to sell it. So suddenly the food donations went down. Many of our food banks are small nonprofits that rely on events to raise money. A lot of those spring galas and things all had to be canceled, of course. So our food banks were raising less money locally. And we saw the volunteers, those 2 million volunteers a month that I talked about, that we rely on, have to go away. Many of them are seniors who, for their own safety, needed to stay home. A number of them are, people from companies like yours that volunteer as teams, and those folks are suddenly working remote. So we had to do a lot. Our network really had to pivot quickly. And we were able to do that with help from partners like you who've stepped up. We've distributed already more than $127 million to our network food banks, with more to come. Some of what we've done is use some of those funds for food purchase. So we already had somewhat of a food purchasing program, but we've had to scale that up because of the decline in donations, to make sure that these disaster boxes that we're handing out to folks are filled with good, healthy foods that can sustain a family for a week or two at a time until the next distribution. We had to overnight pivot in our distribution models. Ordinarily, most of the time, our distribution models have relied on bringing people together, kids around a table or seniors at a senior center. And suddenly people could not gather. So we had to switch to low and no touch distribution models, which are safer, but more expensive, like evolving into mobile drive-through pantries, where you're seeing folks line up in their cars to receive a box of food that's put in their trunk. So there's as little touch as possible. About half of our food banks have been able to move forward quickly on home delivery of food to seniors and persons with disabilities who may not drive or may not have cars. A number of our food banks also have relied on, instead of bringing kids together for a meal, grab and go models, where there's bags of breakfast or lunch that they or their parents can come by and pick up and go eat at home elsewhere. And we had to pivot on how we get the labor we need to do what we need to do. We formed partnerships. About half of our food banks have been helped by the National Guard in their state to distribute food. We formed a national partnership with Team Rubicon, which is a veteran-led disaster relief organization, and they are activating at food banks around the country. Also, the funds that we're distributing, some of our food banks are using those funds to pay labor to make sure that they have the labor that they need to get the food sorted and get the food out. So that's kind of the overnight, sort of the perfect storm that we encountered, and the way that we pivoted. Some of what we're also doing is really working at scale, partnering with USDA to tighten those farm to food bank relationships. So some of those farmers and growers I talked about who suddenly didn't have customers, Feeding America and Farm Bureau and others advocated with USDA to create what's now called the Coronavirus Food Assistance Program, which has helped to get food boxes of fresh, healthy foods, use food service industry companies, the Cisco's and the US Foods, these big ones that you're familiar with, and some smaller ones as well, kind of put them back to work, sourcing that food from farmers and growers and delivering it to people in need. So we've also made sure that food banks have training and assistance and sort of a whole realm of areas that every business, including yours, didn't have to think about so much before, about safety of your workers and having the right kind of personal protective equipment for your workers. And food safety has always been our top priority, and of course, worker safety, but there's a whole new kind of realm of that as well. And we're providing food banks with those kinds of resources, thanks to partners like you. So that's some of what we've been able to do. We've been really, one of the things that's so important about the kinds of campaigns that you're running, clearly the funds are so important and they go a long way to meeting the need, but you also raise awareness, and that's so important as well. And one of the things that we've been gratified by is that so many partners have come to us offering opportunities for our leadership and our network food bank leaders to go on camera or to be interviewed for broadcast and print media about the need. So I know one of the things that Steve and I were talking about, he was flipping channels Memorial Day weekend that Sunday and saw the golf match with Tiger Woods and Peyton Manning, Phil Mickelson, and Tom Brady, and also our CEO, Claire Babineau-Fontenot. I don't know that she's a golfer, but she was very delighted to be there virtually among their company that day to be able to share with that amazing audience about the need of feeding America. So we really just want to thank you for bringing not only your dollars, which are so critical, but also your hearts and your bright minds and your skills to this partnership.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Really informative. And a couple of the questions. One is, I know this gets asked a lot, and in everything you said, I might have missed it, but what percentage of the dollars that we're donating will actually go to somebody who needs the help and the food itself?
Yes, so ordinarily Feeding America would ask for a portion of the funds to the national office, 10%. In the case of this urgent crisis, our CEO has said that we are not making that request. 100% of the funds that we raise for our COVID-19 response fund are going directly to our food banks to serve people in need. So those funds are getting distributed to food banks all across the country. We're activating nationally because this is a national crisis, both a public health and an economic crisis. And 100% of your dollars will go to food banks who are serving people on the front line of serving people right now.
That's great. It's amazing. And then I know you mentioned all of the resources that you have all these different ways to leverage, the amount of meals for $1. And so to give people an idea, how many meals can you serve, and provide, families out of like for every dollar?
Yeah, so we each dollar helps to provide at least 10 meals served on behalf of the Feeding America network. And so you might ask, 10 meals for $1, how does that work? And it really is because of the economies at scale that we're able to work with large scale purchases or donations from manufacturers and retailers, also working with government commodity programs, the Emergency Food Assistance Program and others that provide large kind of bulk quantities of healthy foods to our food banks. And that's how we're able to source and distribute meals at a highly efficient rate.
It's great.
Elizabeth, you mentioned the golf tournament a week ago.
Yeah.
I think we started our discussions a few weeks prior. Just curious, and as employees might be curious as well, just curious how that partnership came about.
Yeah, that was the Fanatics had what they call the All-In Challenge, and they partnered with Feeding America and a few other major nonprofits serving the need right now, and conceived of this great event and just asked us if we would be able to provide our CEO as a spokesperson. It's just one of a number of examples where this crisis has really made clear to so many how many families live a paycheck or two away from needing help. The government shutdown showed us that, and this has even more so. So there's been a lot of attention from the kind of the arts and media communities, as well as sports, to help raise awareness for this mission, which we really appreciate because that's what helps. Hunger in America is ordinarily not very well understood. People think it kind of happens in other places, or that it's mainly about, like in other parts of the world, or that it's mainly about homelessness. But in fact, in ordinary times before this crisis, 1 in 9 adults and 1 in 7 children didn't have enough food for an active, healthy life. And unfortunately, we're seeing an increase in those numbers because of this crisis. Already about 40 million Americans were hungry. Now another 17 million or more added on top of that. And these folks are going to need help for a while. We know from past disasters, and this is unlike any other, that recovery takes a while. The most vulnerable take time to bounce back. But the Feeding America Network is also really about empowerment. We have a lot of job training programs as part of what we do, culinary kitchens, warehouse training, forklift certification. We really maximize all parts of the food bank to provide job training opportunities for folks to then be able to get jobs, because we know really the best food assistance program is a good job. So your employees certainly know that well, and our food banks do too. So for most people, their need for our services is episodic, not chronic. Families face hard times for a while. We're there for the help they need. They get back on their feet. Sometimes they turn into volunteers or even donors, but we're there again if they need us someday. And so it's kind of a community helping each other.
Yeah, and to really stress the fact that the goal here is $3 million that we want to raise. And so for every $1, it's producing 10 meals. We're talking about being able to help people where we're going to contribute 30 million meals, right? So
it's really extraordinary.
Yeah, you're talking about a time that we really need it. And the cool thing is we're already 15% of our goal right here, right? So we're 15% of our goal for the 3 million. And we just need everyone's help as far as, going online and donating, getting friends, family members, people outside your community, whoever it might be, to contribute.
It's a great start, but
Yep.
we've got a little ways to go, right? Yeah.
So the other question I know is, there's a lot of talk with people just want to know where the food banks are. And, you mentioned that the food banks are in every county in the country. Are there more going right now to inner city, or is there a way for us to say that we would like, some to go to, inner city food banks versus rural food banks? I don't know if we want to do that or not. I'm just curious if that's even a possibility.
Sure, yes. And so our website, feedingamerica.org, has Find Your Local Food Bank, and anyone can put a zip code in there and find the Feeding America food bank that serves that area. And they cover the nation. So we're in red states and blue states. We serve urban areas, rural areas. Many partners are supporting the COVID-19 Response Fund and saying, Feeding America, you please grant out these funds. We're using a data-driven methodology to identify areas of need based on incidences of outbreak of the pandemic, rates of joblessness, the presence of vulnerable populations, and operating status of the budgets of the food banks in those areas. So we're granting out those funds according to need. However, some partners do say, we have markets of interest that are really important to us, where our offices are, where our plants or distribution centers maybe, or a lot of our employees live. We'd really like you to direct some of these funds to food banks that serve those areas, and we can work with you to do that. So if you have zip codes of interest, we can do a food bank match and show you the Feeding America food banks that serve that area.
Love it. One of the cool things, I think, Elizabeth, on that point that you and I were talking about the other day was how dynamic and fluid the situation is, right? And what might be the area of
what situation as far as
hunger,
the needs?
Hunger,
the needs. Yeah.
So what might be the most pronounced need today? Yeah. It could be somewhere totally different by Friday.
Right. Yeah. Right.
And they have their finger on the pulse of where is the area of most need, which is
what
great.
we want. Right. That's great.
But
yeah, that's right. And go ahead.
But I didn't want to miss the point that, 200 food banks around the country, I think based on our conversation, that serves every county in the U.S., right? So
That's right. And you might ask, and, so each of those food banks is at the center. It's like a hub and spoke model of hundreds of agency partners, and that's how they get the food out. So sometimes folks who haven't visited a food bank before, and please do visit one if you haven't yet, kind of think they're the same as food pantries, but a food bank is like this major warehouse operation, sourcing logistics, truck bays, cold storage, you name it. And then they source and provide the food to agency partners that include food pantries that you may be more familiar with having seen in a church that you went to, or at an agency down the street from you, or something like that. So that's how they cover the country, is through those 60,000 agency partners all around the country.
That's great.
Cool.
Anything else for you?
Cole, if you could just pull up the last slide, we could use that to help, I think, wrap.
Okay, cool.
This is a note that that little. Oh,
Oh,
that's
yeah.
even better. Yeah.
No, let's.
There was a note back there that a child wrote to the staff at one of our food banks, and I wanted to provide that because he wrote that to the folks at the food bank, but it's also for partners like you. Thank you for all you're doing to help feed people during this pandemic, and please stay safe.
Very sweet.
Elizabeth, thank you so much. Really appreciate you joining, and you're doing great work. It's
Cole,
good,
could you just
good
go to,
stuff.
Cole, could you just go to the last slide?
One more slide,
just
I guess.
to flash
Okay.
the URLs. Yeah. So as a reminder, employees go to rate.com/food drive, and friends and family of GR externally go to rate.com/donate to, again, take advantage of that 2-for-1 match and help us meet our goal. Elizabeth, thanks so much for the partnership.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I'm so moved to have your wonderful company step up, and we're really, really grateful for the partnership. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Thanks, Elizabeth. All right. I think that wraps today, and look forward to seeing everyone tomorrow too. We're going to go through a lot of stories and talk about, how we started the company, and we talk about perseverance and overcoming obstacles. We're going to go a lot of overcoming obstacles and us, barely making it, or really statistically shouldn't have been made it many, many times, getting through the housing crisis and all sorts of stuff. So we're going to have fun with that, and then also give updates on how we're doing on fundraising. So thanks, everybody, and have a great afternoon. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.